I want to welcome everybody, especially our people who are coming and joining us online. We're grateful for your viewing of our service this morning. We are having a wonderful morning here in Garden City, Kansas, and the Church of the Brethren is alive and well and doing some wonderful things. We just want to remind everybody that at the end of the service, we will be having the Lord's Supper, and if you at home would like to partake in that, you are certainly welcome to join us as we partake in the Lord's Supper. We're going to sing our hymns of celebration, Open Up the Heavens by Meredith Andrews. Let's stand together as we sing that. he did. Just a few announcements today. They're in your bulletin. The 2021 directories are all available for you. They're on the railing out in the foyer. Please be sure and take one. Tuesday night, we will have our congregational business meeting. It's at 7 o'clock. Everyone's invited. Only members can vote, but everyone's welcome to come as we give the reports for 2020 and talk about things looking forward to the future. Wednesday, all of our youth groups are meeting again. Adult Bible studies meeting again. Thursday, men's Bible study, all ready to go at timeout, 9 o'clock in the morning. If you have ordered one of our new Pew Bibles, now I need to tell you, this is a real joy. You know, when you start messing around with things in the sanctuary, preachers get a little nervous. You know, it's not called job security. So I was a little curious as to what your response was going to be to new Pew Bibles in a different version than what we have. Well, I will tell you, we ended up ordering all 100 that they had in stock. We ended up with over 95 orders for Bibles. That was just an amazing response to our new Pew Bibles. If you have ordered them for yourself, please mark your check to the Church of the Brethren. They're $15.19. That is a really good deal for this wonderful Bible. And we're grateful to all of you who have ordered it. We got everyone they had in their warehouse. So I told Karen, go ahead and order them. We just need to get them here. So they are ordered, and we'll be on our way. We are grateful every week for the faithfulness of God's people, and we have a box in the back where everyone places their offering. It's a safe way to do offering during COVID time. We are grateful also for those who are either watching us online or those who just prefer to use our online portal. We do have a way on our Facebook, on our website to give, and we're grateful for that giving every day. We want to thank you for that. I'm going to ask you, as we thank God for those gifts, let's stand together as we sing the doxology. We are in our next sermon on the series, What Jesus Said. It's actually titled, That's What the Man Said. But we're doing the Sermon on the Mount. We're going through it. Today we're going to be talking about authenticity. There's an outline in your bulletin. In Matthew 5, Jesus lays out who's invited to the party. You remember I talked about the invitation to the party, or who's invited to be part of the kingdom. And then he begins to talk about what life in the kingdom is like. He talks about our purpose, to be salt and light, to impact our world, to make a difference. Then we talked about anger. Everyone seemed to respond to that anger sermon. Maybe a lot of pent-up anxiety or anger after 2020. Then last week I talked about relationships and how to manage relationships and how to navigate life with other people, because we're just surrounded by other people. Today Jesus kind of shifts into a different gear as we go into chapter 6. It's the middle chapter of the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. Now he's going to present some of the obstacles or the roadblocks that hinder us in this kingdom living. You know there are things that are there that are going to hinder you. They just do. One is our insatiable need for the approval of others. Let me say that again. Our insatiable need for the approval of others. We want everyone to like what we do, what we say, how we look. You know, we stand in front of the mirror and we say to our spouse, does this make any part of me look fat? It's like, hello, Bob. But we want everybody's approval. And the other one is our amazing attempts to find security through the amassing of wealth. We all want more money, more money, more money. Today I want to talk about what seems to be an unbelievable high need for approval. So I want you to look with me. We're just going to look at 4 verses today that Jesus uses to tell those that are gathered on the hill that day, here's an obstacle. Here's a roadblock. So let's look at them. It's going to be Matthew 6:1, Matthew 6:2, Matthew 6:5, and Matthew 16. Let's take them one at a time. Matthew 6:1. Beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them, for then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. And then verse 2. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues or in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward already. And then verse 5, when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they might be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, they have received their reward. And then verse 16. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly, I say to you, they've received their reward already. Jesus says we need to be careful. We're all conscious about how other people perceive us. Jesus is not saying it doesn't matter what you look like, and he's not saying you should stop praying, or you should stop fasting, or you should stop giving to the poor. What he is saying is, what's your motivation behind it? Why are you doing those things? Is it just a performance? Is it so you can be seen? What's your motivation? We're in a constant image battle. I heard about a guy who went to get life insurance. He was talking to the insurance agent, and the agent asked him, so I need some background history. Tell me about your father. He said, my father's dead. He said, my father died at 43 from a heart attack. He said, well, what about your mother? He said, she died at 41 from cancer. And the agent just rips up the paper and said, you'll never get insurance with that sort of history. So the next week he goes to a different insurance agent, and the insurance agent asked him for some information. He said, so tell me, what's the status of your father? He said, he's deceased. He died at 96 in a mountain climbing accident. He said, and what's the status of your mother? Oh, she died at 91 giving birth to my younger sister. We all want to look good. We all want approval. You see, it's always about approval. We do everything we can to shape the perception that other people might have of us. We're so afraid of what they will think if they could really see inside of us. We lack authenticity. Jesus says it's time to be real and quit worrying about what other people think. Don't seek their approval. Even in the good things that you do, seek God's approval, because ultimately that's all that matters. So here's a simple definition of authenticity. Bill Hybels says authenticity is who you are when no one is looking. Who you are when no one is looking. And you notice that in the warnings that Jesus gave, those 4 warnings, he talked about the other side. The other side is the hypocrisy. He called them hypocrites. The Pharisees, as an example. He said they're like hypocrites. They're like actors on a stage. They put masks on. They're role-playing. I love it when someone says to me, I like church, I'm all for church, but I don't want to go to church because there's just a room filled with a bunch of hypocrites, and I always tell them that's all right, there's always room for one more. But we struggle in the area of role-playing. Some of us probably walked in today with a mask on. We probably did. We don't want anyone in the room to know that we're hurting, or we're broken, or we're going through this, or we're going through that. So let's get into the outline. Number 1, Jesus says, be careful you don't become a professional Christian. I love that term. It comes from Matthew West, who wrote a wonderful song, and then he made a book after it. The name of the song is Hello, My Name Is. But he wrote a book, and he titled it with the same title, and he devotes an entire chapter about the real struggle that he has as a preacher's kid, as a Christian singer, as one who's always on the stage, always up front. He's always on. And people think that he always has to be the professional Christian. Before our service this morning, I played his newest video. It's called Truth Be Told. It's by Matthew West. It's one of the most powerful songs I've heard in a long time. I know it hit me right between the eyes. He asked several questions. Lie number 1, lie number 2, lie number 3. We're going to get to them in just a minute. Perhaps maybe this afternoon or during this week you'll have some time to watch the video. And one of the things my wife and I found when we were watching the video on YouTube is there are other videos. He has actually done daily devotions that go along with the video. And it's Truth Be Told, he calls them Devos, 1, 2, 3, and 4. We're anxiously waiting for number 5. So listen to these words. I'll read them for you. Lie number 1, you're supposed to have it all together. I know no one in this room has ever felt that way. And when they're asked how you're doing, just smile and tell them never better. Lie number 2, everybody's life is perfect except yours. So keep your messes and your wounds and your secrets safe with you behind closed doors. Truth be told, the truth is rarely told. Now I say I'm fine, yeah I'm fine, oh I'm fine, hey I'm fine, but I'm not. I'm broken. And when it's out of control, I say it's under control, but it's not, and you know it. I don't know why it's so hard to admit it, when being honest is the only way to fix it. There's no failure, no fall, there's no sin you don't already know, so let the truth be told. There's a sign on the door that says, come as you are, but I doubt it. Because if we lived like it was true, every Sunday morning pew would be crowded. But didn't you say the church should look more like a hospital, a safe place for the sick, the sinner, the scarred, and the prodigals like me? Well, truth be told, the truth is rarely told. Oh, I'm fine. Yes, I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine. Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine, but I'm not. I'm broken. I don't know why it's so hard to admit it when being honest is the only way to fix it. There's no failure, no fall, there's no sin you don't already know, so let the truth be told. can I really stand unashamed, knowing that you love me and it won't change? Oh God, if that's really true, then let the truth be told. Let the truth be told. And then the chorus. So I ask you, which lie best fits your life? Some of us walked in today, and our life is a mess, but nobody in this room is ever going to know it because we're afraid to share it. We're afraid of what they might think. You see, our life is sometimes like a house of cards. If a strong wind came and blew just one card down, the whole thing would just fall. You see, it's a daily grind, every day. We keep changing the mask, putting the mask on, this mask and that mask, for different people because we want everybody to like us. Jesus says there are two tests, and that's point number 2. There are 2 tests that we take daily. 2 tests. The first one is the authenticity test. That's what I do when people are watching. Jesus says, watch your motivation. If it is just to look good to people, then that's going to be your reward. That's it. That's all you're going to get. I love the cartoon of the pastor and his wife, and the wife is looking up to him, and she says, honey, why don't you be grumpy at church this week instead of being grumpy at home? I told her I was going to tell that this morning. That's kind of harsh, if you want to know the truth. That's kind of harsh. But it's true. We scream and yell at our kids, our spouses. We get in the car, we get to work, and we act like everything is just fine. We come into church this morning, we climb the stairs sit in our pew, and everything is just fine. I'm on Mount Olympus, everything is great, but it's not. Jesus says there's nothing wrong in praying for people, but don't flaunt it. Don't flaunt it. And when your stomach growls at church, it's probably not okay to say to those around you, it's okay, I've been on a 5-day fast. Because you probably haven't been on a 5-day fast. Whose praise are we seeking? I'll be honest with you, it's a battle for every pastor, and I've shared that with you. I've shared that with you before, that one of my biggest problems is I so want to please you that I run into that area we call people pleasing. It's called the great big psychological term codependency. Every preacher has a little bit of it. I think I got a little extra dose of it. I'm just being honest, because that's what he's asking us to be, is honest. And I have to check my motives all the time to make sure that my motives are pure when I say whatever I say. When I preach whatever I preach, what's my motive? Is it for you to walk out and say, oh, preacher, that was an A+. When I know in my heart it wasn't an A+. I'm not a person who loves rap music, but I have fallen in love in a manly sort of way with a guy named Toby Mac, who writes some of the most powerful songs. And we all know Toby, 21-year-old son, committed suicide just last year. Toby Mac sings a song. He says as he's talking about the song that one of his children said, Dad, I know you're going to perform today wherever you are, wherever he is. He says, I hope God steals your show. You know what? That's what it's all about. I hope every time we come to worship that you don't think that Bob's up here performing. I hope that in any way God would just steal the show and we would make it about him. But there's not only the authenticity test, there is the secrecy test. So here it is. Would you do what you do if no one was watching? Do you pray for a meal at a restaurant when everyone in the restaurant is looking at you, but rarely when you're in the privacy of your home? Would you do that if there was no reward or no applause? Would you do it if nobody noticed? 2 Corinthians 9:5. Jesus is talking about stewardship. Listen to what he said. Paul is talking about stewardship. So I thought it necessary to urge you, brothers, to go on ahead to you and arrange in advance for the gift you have promised, so that it may be ready as a willing gift, not as in the ESV says exaction, but some of the other versions says not grudgingly. You see, that's about the motivation, why we give, why we put what we put in that box, why we give so much to Helping Hands. And I'll just tell you, folks, it's just staggering what this church does in the area of Helping Hands, helping people in this community. It's just plain amazing. I'll share some of that at our congregational meeting on Tuesday night, 7 o'clock, right here. That's a free advertisement. How much would you give if no one knew it? What about fasting or the other spiritual disciplines? Would you do them if no one knew about it? We need to practice the discipline of secrecy. Jesus says the text is, what is your motivation? And whose applause do you seek? Now we get to point C. We need to clean from the inside out. We need to clean from the inside out. I want to tell you a great story. It's a little long, so I need a little water. I love the story Max Lucado tells. He's just an awesome Christian writer. But for some years, he and his family did ministry in Brazil. And he wrote a book called The Applause of Heaven, and this story is in that Applause to Heaven book. So here's what he says. He says, when my family lived in Rio de Janeiro, I owned a ham radio. I kept it in the utility room on top of the freezer. When we traveled, I always unplugged the radio and disconnected the antenna. Once when we were leaving for a week-long trip, I remembered I hadn't unplugged the radio. I ran back in the house, pulled the plug, and dashed out again. But I pulled the wrong plug. I unplugged the freezer. It was summertime. And summer in Rio defines the word hot. Our apartment was on the 14th floor, which adds another degree of intensity to the word hot. For 7 days, then, a freezer full of food sat in a sweltering apartment with the power off. When we came home, his wife decided to get some meat out of the freezer, and as she opened the freezer door, I won't go into detail as to what she saw, but I will say it was a moving experience. That's his words. Guess who got figured out as the one who unplugged the freezer, and who was therefore given the responsibility of cleaning it? You got it. So I went to work. What is the best way to clean out a rotten freezer? I knew exactly what to do. I got a rag and a bucket of soapy water and began to clean the outside of the appliance. I was sure the odor would disappear with a good shine, so I polished and buffed and wiped. When I was through, the freezer could have passed for a Marine boot camp inspection. It was absolutely sparkling. But when I opened the door, the freezer was revolting. Now you're probably wondering what kind of a fool would do that. So read on. No problem. I thought I knew what to do. The freezer needs some friends. I'd stink too if I had a social life of a machine in a utility room. So I threw a party and invited all the appliances from the neighborhood kitchens. It was hard work, but we filled our apartment with refrigerators, stoves, microwaves, washing machines. It was an awesome party. A couple of toasters recognized themselves from an appliance store. It was great. Everyone played pin the plug on the socket and had a few laughs about unlimited warranties. The blenders were a hit, though, but they didn't mix very well. That's a little pun, by the way. I was sure the social interaction would cure the inside of my freezer, but I was wrong. I opened it up and the stink was even worse. Now what? I had an idea. If a polish job wouldn't do it and a social ice wouldn't do it, I'd give the freezer a new status. I bought a Mercedes sticker and stuck it on the door. I painted a paisley tie down the front. I put a Save the Whale bumper sticker on the rear and installed a cellular phone on the side. That freezer was so classy, it was stylish, it was even cool. I splashed it with cologne and gave it a credit card for clout. Then I backed away, admired the high-class freezer. This freezer just might make Popular Mechanics, I told it, and it blushed. Then I opened the door, expecting to see a clean inside. But what I saw was a putrid, stinky, repulsive interior. I could think of only one more option. My freezer needed some high-voltage pleasure. I immediately bought it some copies of Play Fridge magazine, the publication that displays freezers with their doors wide open. I rented some films about Foxy appliances. My favorite was called The Big Chill. I even tried to get my freezer a date with the Westinghouse next door, but she gave him the cold shoulder. After a few days of supercharge, after hours of entertainment, I opened the door and I nearly got sick. You see, he was never going to clean it out unless he got inside. We have to get inside. We have to let God get inside of our hearts and clean us from the inside out. Hebrews 22 says, let us draw near with a true heart, in full assurance of faith, with our hearts sprinkled clean from an evil conscience, and our bodies washed with pure water. We need to stay pure and authentic, and it starts with a clean heart. We need the truth be told song, as it says, we need to be honest with God, and it starts from the inside out. When we get honest with God, it allows us to be honest with each other. And I guarantee you, there is someone in this room today or listening to us online who is afraid to walk in this door and tell people how they really feel. They have a difficulty being honest. They're afraid to tell their life group or their Bible study what's going on because of the way they might be judged. And that leads me to point number 3. The church needs to be a safe place for us to be honest. The church needs to be a safe place for us to be honest. I love the honesty, the pure honesty of a recovery group. When I had the privilege of leading for 10 years Celebrate Recovery, I looked forward every week to being with those men, and we put men in one room and women in another room to make it a safer place. And I know that people could say what they needed to say, and some of them are in this room today and have been in those rooms with me. In that room, I introduced myself not as Pastor Bob, not as one of the pastors at the church, not anything like that. It's just, I'm Bob, I'm a follower of Christ, and I struggle with people-pleasing, commonly called codependency. Others would say I'm whoever, and I struggle with alcohol, or I struggle with drugs, or I struggle with anger. You see, the bottom line is, in one way or another, we are all hypocrites. We are all, at times, professional Christians. And Christ says, drop the pretense, take the mask off. The church should honestly be the safest place in the world for people to come and be honest and not get a judgment from anybody. The church needs to be a place where we can take our mask off and just be real. As Matthew West said, if we honestly did that, our pews would just be full of people. If I'm going to be truly honest with you, I should probably introduce myself to you as, hi, I'm Bob, and I'm a sinner. That's it. David said in the 36th Psalm, I will bless the Lord at all times. His praise shall continually be on my mouth. My soul makes its boast in the Lord. Let the humble hear and be glad. Oh, magnify the Lord with me, and let us exalt his name together. I sought the Lord, and he answered me and delivered me from my fears. You see, we need to be honest with God. We need to be honest with each other. A couple of weeks ago, I had the privilege of sharing with Vaughn in the funeral of a lady who was a vital part of this church. And if ever there was anybody in this church who was a public figure, it was Loretta. She was on the radio every day. Everybody knew who she was. She always had to be on, as I said earlier. What a wonderful, dynamic Christian. And as Vaughn said, it was easy to do her funeral because we know of her walk and her commitment to Christ. And I concluded her message with this line, and it is my conclusion to my sermon today. We need to play to an audience of one God. It's great if I have your approval. It's great if I have the approval of my wife and our son and our grandkids. But you know, ultimately, there's only one person I have to have the approval of. That's God. So we need to take our mask off. We need to be honest with each other and allow people to be honest with us. In just a moment, we're going to have the Lord's Supper. There is nothing more communal within the family than sharing in the Lord's Supper together. Before the deacons come, and we actually have a song we're going to sing before we actually take communion, I want to read from 1 Corinthians 11 what Paul says to the church family about the Lord's Supper. For I received from the Lord what I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, took bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, This is my body which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me. In the same way also he took the cup after supper, saying, This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes. Whoever, therefore, eats the bread or drinks the cup of the Lord in an unworthy manner will be guilty concerning the body and the blood of Christ. Let each person examine themselves, and so eat the bread and drink the cup. Each person. So as we partake, the deacons and I are not going to stand in judgment of anyone in this room. If you are a believer in Christ, and the communion is passed, and you wish to partake, you examine yourself. And as I said, I always have to begin from the fact that I'm a sinner. and I am not worthy to partake, but he's invited me to partake. We're going to sing a great hymn of the church. I can tell you, August 26, 1965, this song was playing when I came and committed myself to full-time Christian service at church camp. It is absolutely, without a doubt, one of my favorite songs. You all know it. I surrender all. We're going to sing it as we stand together. I surrender all.